to them. Okay, guys. Let me say good afternoon and welcome to the class. Today we're looking at political communication. We're looking at campaign effect. All right, the effect of political campaigns, and we're going to discuss how we think that whether or what we think about campaign, whether we think campaigns have an effect or do not have an effect. It's one of the conversations in political communications. But of course, it has a bearing on our objectives of political campaigns, the objective that we set, to achieve from political campaigns. But of course, that also defines the parameters of how we conduct, political campaigns. And I think we've actually set off on a good start with, the discussions on mediatization and the kind of variety that we have. Great. So, simple question. We all have lived the campaign. In fact, we are lucky to have had the opportunity to live the last elections, 2020 campaign. We have consumed it, and in fact, we're still consuming it, as a result of the court proceedings. Now, simple question. What do you think is the meaning of effect? What do we say effect is? Who can tell us? So, you know the protocol. You lift up your hand, and then we call you. What is the meaning of effect? When we say effect, what does that mean? Yeah, so you lift up your hand and then you unmute and then you speak when I call you. Yeah, effect, what does that mean, please? When we say effect, McCaffrey, try.
So I'd say an effect is a result of an action. Fantastic. Or a consequence.
Fantastic. So we're talking about the result of an action. So there must be an activity, and the consequences thereof is what we're talking about effect. Amazing. I will go a bit.
So the impact of an action.
Excellent. So we can talk about impact. Yes, Prince.
All right, sir. So I think it is the influence something has on you.
Fantastic.
The influence.
Exactly. So these points are what we talk about effect. So for effect to happen, there must be something, there must be an activity. And so we're going to actually, analyze, or we're going to actually discuss, does campaign or do campaigns have an effect? I.e., do campaigns have consequences? So the activities that we throw out there, when we talk about campaigns, we do so many things. You can actually look at the various things that the campaign, happened, or, the various activities that political parties actually did. What were the effects of those, or were they not effects? So we're going to look at it. And in the last class, somebody also put in a perspective to say that the effect could be categorized into two, a negative or positive effect. And, that was also advanced, in that sense. We're going to actually look at the campaigns in that perspective. Now, again, as a starter, how many of us, and you can actually lift your hand, how many of us from the beginning, and when I say from the beginning, we can look at it from January or before January 2020, how many of us thought that they were not going to vote come the elections? How many of us? Lift up your hand. So we have Prince, we have McCaffrey, we have Nanajua. How many of us thought we're not going to vote? Sonia, and who's user? User, change your name, user. Beatrice, yes. How many of us thought that we're not going to vote? So far we have about 15 people, and it's growing, saying that they thought that they were not going to vote. Okay, so who can tell me at what point did they decide that they were going to vote? Who out of you? Yeah, so you can put your hand down and one person, you start again. Okay, let's see. Okay, so let's give Beatrice, at what point did you decide then that you were going to vote? Okay, Calvin. Yeah, Calvin, come in. Oh, Beatrice, come in then. At what point did you decide that you were going to vote? Nanaya? Yeah? Okay. Let's say Prince. Prince, when did you?
Okay, sir. So so it was actually one day when I was at work, and then the president was actually having a rally. That's a campaign at Agbogloshi Market. So I then went and then listened to some of his policies that he was communicating to the people around. So after listening to the policies, and then I made my mind to actually vote for the president on that basis. So it was actually during the rally or the campaign. That's when I made my mindset.
Okay, what month was this? What month was this?
So, it was in late January.
Late January. Okay.
Yes, sorry, late November. Sorry.
Late November. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, can give us an example. When did you change your mind? When did you change your mind? PAK. Who is PAK? PAK. Who is PAK? PAK.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, voting for a political party is more or less like we have a tradition. So our family has a line of voting, and that's what everybody comes to do and then to meet. So once you are born into it, because there's more or less an allegiance that my family has with a political party.
Okay.
So once you are born, automatically you become a member of that political party. Okay. And since I was born, I haven't seen any member of our party, be it the nuclear or the extended, having a diverse view of what I came to meet.
Okay. Okay, great point. So, but your name PAK, is that a political party's name? PAK?
No.
So what's your name? Why did you decide to put PAK there?
Oh, okay, that's the initials of my name.
Okay, so what is it?
It is Pius Esiedukweni.
Okay, all right, Pius Esiedukweni.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Pius. All right, so exactly the point that Pius articulated, and that's the case for a significant number of people as well. You know, it's almost like a ritual. They will vote in every elections. Of course, Beatrice says that she can't talk because she's in a noisy place, but she decided to vote when she started working with the EC. That's when she made a decision. Now, Nana, you have to tell us at what time. I mean, when was that decision? Which month? Okay, let's go ahead. Epiphania, is that correct? Did I mention it correctly?
Yeah, Epiphania.
Epiphania, yeah, tell us. Go ahead. Go ahead, Epiphania. We can't hear you. Okay. Patience, go ahead. Tell us.
Okay, I decided to vote when Honorable Oslo who told me when they come to power, she's going to help me secure a job. Okay. So it was her influence that I used to.
Excellent. What month was this?
That was just last year.
Yeah, what month?
Somewhere October, yeah.
October. Okay, great. Somebody asked you a following question and says, has it happened? Did she do it?
She said she's still on it.
Okay, she's still on it. Yeah, that's a typical political. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Somebody says that Hamdia says I never voted. Okay, Hamdia, thank you. All right. Let's see. Epiphany, are you back? Otherwise, McAfee. Yeah, McAfee.
So I was persuaded by a friend to vote. He actually came to pick me to go vote. I decided I wasn't going to vote because I kind of feel politicians are all the same. You know, they all come and give us the promises, and then when they come to power, they really don't do anything.
I will help you secure a vote.
Yes. Yeah, and so I actually decided to vote on the day, only because the friend came to pick me up.
Only because the friend came to. Excellent. All right. Ruth says, I voted because my mom made me. For free SHS for my brother, of course. Okay, great. All right, who else? Whose hand is up again? Sefako, let's hear you.
Okay. I decided not to vote because when the current government came into power, our Director General in my office as a bomb, and nothing is going on in my office. If you don't take care, the company will collapse. So I decided to vote so that I'll vote them out of power, so that will bring me a better Director General to affect my life. Because it makes things difficult for us in our office.
Oh wow, that's a very
But the position of a Director General is chosen not on political lines.
Hey, who told you? It is.
It was the
president. It was the president who appointed the Director
It's a political.
General.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a political appointment, sir.
And though he's messing up, the president has decided not to take him out. So the only thing that we can do is to vote.
Okay. So that was the behavior of the Director General influenced your vote. Okay. So Abubakar was asking Patience, did you just voted and campaign for her, or you did only one? That's Patience. He's trying to understand why you haven't had a job, whether you actually campaigned or Okay. Lamini. Okay, Sonia. Sonia, come first. Okay.
Sir, please, I voted because my sister actually enjoyed the free SHS and she passed successfully to the university. So it gave me the opportunity to actually care for others who are, coming into the system. So I actually voted for the president.
Okay, great point. All right. Patience, were you coming back on?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question is it Abubakar asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just voted for her. I didn't campaign for her.
I'm sure he's wondering, maybe that's the reason why the job hadn't come, because of your contribution was not that, I'm sure that's the premise.
Yeah.
Okay, Collins. Keep Collins.
Yes, because I believe in the ideology of the party.
So at what point did you decide to vote?
That was 96.
And so,
yes, I believe in the Dankwadomo Buzia tradition because of their property-owning democracy.
Okay.
Collins. He's an executive member of the NPP.
Okay. Doma Rashid.
Okay. All right, let's see. Is it Lamini? Have you spoken? Okay. And then Betha says, personally, I decided to vote because I didn't buy into any of their policies. Okay. Belinda says, I voted because it is my civic right. Okay. And Calvin says, I also decided to vote when I had a transportation from Accra to Takrady. That's interesting. Okay, Calvin, so I suppose you are from Takrady, right?
Sir, I haven't spoken yet.
Okay, yeah, let me speak.
Sir, I voted because my boss said she was going to inspect our little fingers to know whether we voted. Because I actually do my service at NCCE. Okay. So we actually went out to educate the public on their right to vote and stuff. Okay, so
Lani is not Ghanaian, no. She's from Cote d'Ivoire.
Right?
Shut up. So that was how I voted.
Yeah, so you have to actually demonstrate that you believe in what you teach, yeah?
Yes, and also looking at Mama's policy of dividing my school fees into two, because I don't have any sibling who is
yeah.
I wanted to enjoy at least free university or free tertiary education. So okay. That's why I voted.
Okay.
Friend.
Hey,
yes.
I'm so proud.
And it's so Apple.
Linda, let's hear you.
Okay, so please, I voted because I wanted to choose my leader. I believe that if my vote is not added to whoever I want to be in power, then that party might lose and it might go against me.
Okay, great point.
Yeah.
And Nanajua says, I didn't vote because none of them gave me money to, and I was selling my vote. Wow. Then somebody says, I never voted because I wasn't feeling well. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, great. So all of us actually, kind of voted at some point, or at some point decided not to vote, but something actually cost us, to actually vote. And that's what we're actually, looking at, the extent to which perhaps, certain activities or certain events in the campaign actually cost us to actually, to vote. And I'm sure there are quite a lot of, when we talk about campaigns, that quite a lot of things come into play. I mean, the songs, the messages, etc. Now, when we look at the effect, which we have said that is the event or is the consequences of the, what do you call, the activity. What do you think are some of the effects really on you yourself? What do you think are some of the effects that the campaign generated? Yeah. What do you think are some of the effects? I won't go bit. Yeah, Prince, come in.
Okay, so actually, I was also able to influence someone. So it's actually had an influence on me to also convince someone to vote for that particular party because of its policies.
Okay, so the campaign had a relational effect, isn't it? Because it made you, or mobilizing effect, it made you, sort of step up for that particular party, which means you actually come back for that particular party. So that effect caused you to take an action, isn't it? So the campaign effect, one of the campaign effects is action. It causes people to take an action, all right, to take a stand, on issues. That's a good one. Alfreda says, I didn't vote because I'm tired of the NDC NPP. The other parties aren't serious too. Okay, great. All right, Lamin, effect. What are some of the effects?
Said the campaign was able to, let's say, convince me to vote for the party I voted for.
Okay.
And it also helped me to also talk to people who actually didn't want to vote,
Okay.
for them to see the benefits of their votes. So,
Okay. So if we say that the campaign made you, convince you to vote for the party you did, was that party a party of choice already, and then you got more convinced, or was it?
it was a party of choice already, but due to their campaign messages and then their policies,
So you got reinforced.
because
Your position on them was reinforced by the campaign.
yes, it was partly reinforced. Even though I've never voted, but I believe in people voting, but I've never voted. So this year was actually, last year was actually my first year voting.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes.
Betha.
Yes, sir. The campaign had a negative effect on me personally. Initially, I had a positive mindset concerning the political party introducing the NAPCO thing because the brother benefited from it. But for my constituency, they didn't help us in any way. So it changed my mind about that political party. So I decided not to vote at all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good one. That a negative rallying point for you. Okay. Good. Adam. Adam, come in.
Sir, please, I think the campaign helped. Sir, please, I think the campaign helped me to analyze their policies and compare them in order to make an informed decision.
Okay, great. So we're saying that perhaps the campaign had an educative effect on you, right? It helped you to the ability to analyze, the political parties. Okay, great. Let's see. Who? Sefako. Yeah, Sefako. Let's listen to you.
So, sorry, it was a mistake.
Okay, great. Patience, your hand is up.
Okay. Personally, I think it had a negative impact on me because maybe I was promised to secure a job after the voting, but I didn't secure the job, and I also quit my job because I was promised to get a better job. So it really had a negative impact on me.
Okay, but would you call it as the campaign or as an individual person's, what do you call, activity? We're looking at the bigger picture of the campaign itself. Would you say that that was an effect of the campaign itself?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Now, Nana just said the campaign made me differentiate between the party that could fulfill its policies from one that could not. Again, so you gain insight in doing that. Joseph, come in.
Okay. Okay, so for me, I was personally disappointed in some of the policies by the major political parties because when you take rent, for instance, both parties didn't display any form of serious ideas when it comes to house rent. And when you take a look at the motor policies, the motor policies, they were just vague. The real ideas were not told to the people. So, for instance, Mama was saying that it's going to legalize the how do you call it, motorcycling business. Meanwhile, he was the same person who made it illegal, and once he's coming to make it legal, he was supposed to tell the people what would make sure that you can legally ride motorcycles. So for me, I was just disappointed in some of the campaign messages by most of the top major parties, but some of the lower parties also had good ideas. But for me, I had made up my mind on who to vote for already, so I just went to vote to exercise my.
Okay, all right, great point. Thank you. Ruby.
Right, just like you was saying, just like the one who was talking right now was saying, most of the political parties, their campaigns were vague. Me, honestly, I didn't vote because like I really didn't see any relevance in what they were saying. Most of it was like just for voting sake and not because they are actually coming to work.
Okay, so for you and I mean, your colleague just spoke. You thought that the essential things that you felt they could have talked about, they didn't. I mean, for example, the rent, and they were not serious about it. So obviously, it didn't actually cause you to do that. Okay, I will go with.
Okay, so the political campaigns also enlightened people. For instance, aside the major political parties, those minor ones like the Osofu Chabo Som and Co, they came up with some policies which the major political parties haven't tackled on that. For instance, reviving of the old factory and those things. So many people got entangled with those policies and decided that we should go to the other side and see how best we can. So that reflected in the election in one way or the other.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So enlightenment on alternative, approaches, to government or alternative policies, etc. Okay, so these are some of the kind of things that we're looking at. Now, before that, obviously, we must understand, political campaigns and the nature and the character of them. And, to look at the political campaigns, we certainly cannot, look at it without looking at the three key elements that campaign focuses on. Obviously, political campaigns, always focus on political parties as one of the integral, elements or integral entities, in the campaign. Political campaign also look at the candidates. For example, there's a focus on the candidate, and of course, there's a focus on the policy programs, that political parties actually advance. Now, surely this is limited. We cannot say the campaign is all about these three, but there are other, elements or other, attributes that we could actually, bring in terms of when we talk about political campaign. So when you hear the word political campaign, what other factors or what other elements do you think come to your mind when you hear the word political, campaigns? Yes. Yeah. Abeye, yeah. How do you pronounce it?
Abeye.
Abeye, sorry, Abeye. Yeah, go on.
Yes, dog, Abeye.
Abeye, thank you. I mean,
Yes, dog. When we talk about political campaigns, I think advertisement comes into mind.
So the channel of communication, the communication itself, great. Yeah, who else?
Okay. So I also think it's a form that political parties, or it's a strategy that political parties use to also market themselves. So it's more or less like a marketing strategy.
Okay, the marketing strategy that they implement or they push. Good, good. Yeah, who else? Yeah, Nana Joa.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. I think they also do campaign by advertising their political party colors.
Okay, so we're talking about the branding, the colors, etc. Okay, so which is part of the party we've talked about. Okay, great. Adam, Nana Joa again. There's another Nana Joa.
Yeah, persuasion.
Perceptions. Okay, so we can talk about
persuasion.
Persuasion. Yeah, we can talk about the persuasive effect that the campaigns have. That's fine. Thank you. And then Adam, come in. Adam, we can't hear you. Unmute yourself and speak. Adam. Okay.
So I think.
Yeah, go on.
So I think the media relation aspect also counts.
Okay,
how
so
the political parties relate with the media to carry out.
So when we hear campaigning, we talk about media as well. Okay, great. Betha.
I think the media relation aspect counts, how they relate with the media to carry their message.
Sure. All right, Betha.
So when we talk about a political campaign, we are looking at how political actors influence their political environment.
Great point.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we have Belinda. Belinda, come in.
Okay, I was also going to talk about the media relations aspect, being part
great.
of what should be focused on.
Okay, Ruby, you can't hear me. Maybe you have to check your network where you are. Okay, Rashid, come in. We're looking at what other elements come
So
when
we talk of political campaign, you are talking about conflict of ideas,
Okay.
where players who are contesting in the election try to persuade potential voters with policies that they believe are superior to that of their opponent.
Of course, great point. Yes, we're talking about ideas, competing ideas. Yes, Barry Kiso.
Yes, I've pasted it in the chat box, but I was going to talk about brand. They make use of branding, and then they make use of public relations.
Yeah, great
Just
point.
like yeah.
All right. So when we talk about the political campaign, so many things come to mind. We're talking about the messaging, obviously the message that they put across. We're talking about the media relations. We're talking about publicity, public relations. Obviously, when we talk about political campaigns, we do not also forget the voters. All right, that actually participate in that. But we're also talking about the players, other stakeholders involved. Even we can talk about in this particular incident, we talk about the role of the security agencies, during the campaign period. So many other things actually come to play. But of course, as communicators or political communicators, our emphasis, we're going to look at these three areas of the candidate, the policy, and the party, and how we actually concentrate and define them in order that we could actually, have a campaign effect that we're actually talking about. So in our focus on the party itself, as strategists, we have to actually work with political parties as strategists. We have to define what we think the media should focus on, or what we want to promote, in order that we could actually achieve the campaign effect that we are talking about. Rashid, your hand is up. Do you want to say something?
It was the earlier one.
Okay. So please put your hand down after that so that we don't get confused. So we're actually looking at how to identify, or the things that we can use to identify the party, in order that there could be focus on them, and that would go on to affect the audience in a way that we want it. Lamin, your hand is up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's hear you.
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about addressing public opinion when you talk about political campaign.
Okay, sure. So it addresses in a public opinion. Great one. Thank you. So if we look at party identity now, party identity has so many strands to it. We start off with the party identity from ideological position perspective. All right. Now every party has what we call ideological ideology or ideological positions, and that is essentially the principle that the party actually hold, the values that actually define the party's behavior and the party's attitude, the party's programs, all those things that actually define that is what we call party identity. And as we said, it starts from the ideological position. All right. So we know that when we say ideological position, we're talking about the left or the right, or we're talking about conservatism or progressive or liberalism. We're talking about capitalists, we're talking about socialists. All those words that we use to describe political parties as belonging to the left or the right. And in our country, when we talk about the left parties, we are looking at the NDC as the flag bearer of the left parties. Hitherto, it was the CPP that was the cup bearer of the left. So the CPP represented the left of the ideological positions in Ghana. Over time, the CPP has receded, and NDC has taken over the left of the parties. Now, when we talk about the right, we're talking about the MPP that occupies the center-right political party. So the MPP is the cupbearer of the right. So people who believe in the right, political ideologies, their representation, party of representation, is the MPP. Now, how did the left and the right actually came about? Of course, in political studies, you actually talk about the days of the what do you call the French Revolution. All right, when after that, you talk about, or even before that, sorry, before that, you talk about the idea that there was a misunderstanding between two groups of people from economic perspective. Those we call the owners of capital, all right, the owners of capital, i.e., simply put, the rich people, people who actually rented labor or who actually asked people to work for them at a fee. So those, we call them the owners of capital. And then those who actually offered labor or provided labor, those who we call the working class, made demands or made demands from the what do you call the rich people or the owners of capital, that they have to be paid their due in terms of their work, all right? How much they work for them, they have to pay. But they also thought that the working class was not due what they were demanding, because they hadn't actually put in enough effort to demonstrate what they actually demanded. So that was the tussle. Now, in resolving that, in that negotiation, those of the working class sat on the left, those of what do you call the capital owners.
Can I get my phone back?
So that is the beginning of what we call the center left or center right, ideological positions.
So I don't
over the years, Francis, you have to meet yourself. Yeah, over the years, that metamorphosed into other, social, what do you call, social structures, because it isn't only, the idea of economic issues are the divisions, evident in, but the divisions are actually evident in other areas like gender issues, areas like religious issues, areas like sexuality. So over the years, it's evolved into other things, all right? And so when we talk about unemployment, now how to solve unemployment is an ideological question, all right? Because there's no one single perspective of solving unemployment. Then the perspective is that if you belong to the left, all right, you would think that unemployment is the responsibility of the government And so government must act to solve unemployment, all right? So the government has that responsibility. The government must take action to build, factories, to build, employment for, to create employment for people. If you have the right, you would say that yes, unemployment perhaps is a government, responsibility, but it's equally the responsibility of the people that they will find themselves jobs, all right? So the center right would propose that instead of government taking the initiative to build, jobs, government would rather or should rather empower people in order that people will create jobs and then would offer jobs to other people to work. So these two ideological positions will approach socioeconomic or sociocultural issues from different angles, all right, from the perspective of the ideological lenses, how they see how the society actually must function, would define that. Now, the issue of sexuality, whether people should be allowed to define their sexuality or it should be allowed to nature. So when you are born a man, certainly you are male. If you are born a woman, certainly you are female. And that should actually define a certain relationship. So man and woman should marry. Cannot be man and man or woman and man. Again, that's an ideological question. For those who belong to the left, would think that there should be ideological or there should be sexual evolution, that we evolve, in terms of our sexuality. So at some point, if somebody feels that they are born a man but they feel like a woman, they must behave as such. And if someone was born a woman and feels that they are a man sexuality, they must behave as such and therefore should be allowed to marry from that perspective. That is an ideological question. Somebody would say that no, that cannot be possible. We need to conserve what had been handed down to us by nature. And so, but you see, the difference is that although these broad identities of ideology from, you can say, from Western, understanding of political culture, does not necessarily transfer directly or, universally into our space. There are some nuances, cultural nuances and socioeconomic nuances to those understanding. And so when you transpose the ideology from one place to the other, or from one regime to the other, it may not work in totality. You have to actually adjust by understanding the cultural and social nuances that actually define that particular regime. Nanajwa, you want to say something?
Yeah, hello, Seb. Before you continue, you saying people believe in the ideology of the party. I would want to ask if, without thinking about what we believe in, does ideology falls in our culture what we believe in or not?
Yeah, there is an interrelationship between culture and ideology. And that's what I'm explaining, that although the people of the left, which elsewhere they call them the liberals, and again, the word progressives are actually used to define them. The understanding of it is that the society progresses, society evolves, and society is not static. And as a result, there must be space to allow this evolution to take place. And that's why they are called liberals.
Okay.
The idea that, there must be a space for people to actually exercise and demonstrate their evolution, exercise and demonstrate their changes, all right, must be permitted in society. But then in some cultures, that cannot be holistically true, because if you take the center-left parties and the center-left politicians in Ghana, I don't think any of them would be able to tell you in the face that they support gayism or lesbianism, all right? That would be somehow a political suicide, all right, for any center-left party to say that they subscribe to sexuality evolution or changes in sexuality. And so policies about gays and things must be allowed to stand. I think that will be a political suicide. And that's why the changes actually come in. So although the global understanding of a center-left liberal progressive party is the acknowledgement of individual rights evolution, or the evolution of people's right, the dynamism in the society must be encouraged and must be actually recognized. In some cultures, like in our culture, that particular side of the left may not be allowed to or maybe not be permitted, in that sense. And it's just because of our cultural underpinnings. Is that clear? All right.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Thank you.
the same way, we can talk about the center right, which is capitalist. All right. Now, the idea of capitalism means that private capital or private people must be allowed to actually propel the development of a country. But if you look at our setup, we do not have the middle income capacity that could, totally support private sector generated wealth or growth. And so at some point in time, there must be state intervention, which is a very center left, ideological position. So you realize that, in Africa, a center right party that is supposed to be private led or private driven growth would be taking on state intervention the state can function well. Why? Because we may not have the capacity to drive private capital. And so you hear free SHS, free capitation grant from Kufuor's time, you hear affordable housing and all those things coming from a center-right party just because you cannot have or you cannot guarantee a totally private-driven economy in a very third world or developing world perspectives. And all these nuances actually have implications on the party's identity. So somebody would argue that, oh yeah, you are a center-right party, why are you proposing free SHS? Well, that's the pragmatics to do. I mean, it's a pragmatic position. You cannot actually say that because you're center-right, you must be dogmatic to the nuances of the very society or very space that you intend to govern. I'm sure you understand that. So these are some of the nuances. And to answer your question, these are some of the nuances of subcultural and cultural and socio-economic differences that interplay with ideological, identities of political parties. So you cannot transpose in total, all right, these Western institutions onto our system. At some point in time, there must be some adaptation, all right. And then
Thank you.
Great. And then you look at credibility, all right. Credibility of the party again is another focus, and that's why in elections you hear political parties throwing jabs at each other and saying, "Oh, you're not credible. You are flip-flopping, etc." Credibility is also one of the focus for political intensity or campaign intensity, in order that can generate effect. All right. So we look at credibility, the position of consistency and of value, of course. What it is it that are you promoting? And I think we had quite a lot of concentration on CST, all right, comprehensive sexuality. Is it CSC or whatever? Comprehensive sexuality education. You remember that debate? That rage?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And that was a credibility issue because the point was that, okay, so you are a center-right government, all right, and you are trying to promote, what you call CSC. That is, those critics were actually accusing, the NPP government of trying to promote what we call sexuality education in our schools, something that our culture abhors, and that actually comes to discredit the party's credentials as a center-right, so to speak, religious, identity, because most center-right parties have fundamental to their identity or core to the identity, the conservatism of what has been handed on by nature, and by nature you mean God, all right? So majority of times when there's a center-right people talking, the introduction of God and the introduction of preservation of God's traditions or the traditions of society is very much embedded in that conversation. Obviously, we hear that much in America. In Ghana, you hear very little. I mean, it's not so much part of the conversation, the God factor, but in US, in other countries, guys, hold on for me just a minute.
Chairman.
So
the French in why?
I can't believe no can mention that about Chairman.
No, I'm not gonna know.
David. At a tip, I don't want it. Yes, I know. Online with the SMBC pay.
But for simple way, I can I want to say no.
The candy issue or come the if you must see the Tiani is go is coming.
Escovania English. Escovania English, no can. Escovania English.
Me tissue, me can't be what can you mean tissue?
You could be a couple of visits.
You could is good is come at the same.
What does
it? Let me trouble my NDC. French never Ghana, but French never saw my NDC. Oh, free Ivy Coast. Yeah, Laurent Babu, you do friend Yamana Bagana. Oh, I better my NDC.
Alex, you fear some what?
I don't know.
Oh, pious, no.
As a more quarter.
Give me a good
I'm a chamber.
Who be friends about Ghana?
Okay, guys. All right. So yeah, so I was talking about the credibility issue, right? So the credibility is about the consistency, that a party, shows, or the consistency of commitment a party shows to a certain value, all right, over time. So you're asking yourself whether that party had been truthful to actually, to the kind of values that they subscribe. Yeah, Collins, you want to say something? Collins.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, let's hear you.
Yes, I'm asking. So the continuous using of the incompetent against the former president, did it discredit him? Can we say it's part of the credit?
Yeah, certainly. When it comes to the candidate, when we are discussing the candidate, we would actually look at that. Judith says that, sir, please, what topic under the campaign are you discussing? Because I'm not understanding anything. Yeah, coming. Yeah. Can someone actually explain to Judith? Give me just a minute or two, all right? Can somebody explain to Judith what we mean by what we are discussing now? And give me just a minute or two.
No, because we are all lost.
Yo, Lamin.
Alex.
Judith.
Lamin.
Alex.
Judith, are you here?
Chairman, Lamin Aba.
Alex, I think I'm a cover. So I feel baby, it's you.
Judith, are you here?
I say.
Political campaign on my three categories and a political campaign. Candidate, party, and
a policy.
We are discussing the party.
Yes. So now
Chairman, kasa yitio.
Where is she?
Nti pacho. King Kong no pacho efrihin.
It's me humpo.
French, explain the thing to me. I don't understand.
Alex.
But it's like the man was explaining to us what is
social party. The definition for political party, it's an institution that has let's say, common ideology. Okay. It means the where ideology issue but we are talking about the party's credibility. And now, it's a question because when we get to the candidates, and the candidate's credibility. But see, we are talking about the party's credibility. Okay,
everyone
so
has its own ideology, but they come together to form one big family with one certain common goal. What I say?
Yes, so for the political party.
That is it.
Into a person
Yes,
one
I am
ideology.
asking you.
Oh, please, one person should talk. We are talking too much. Just one person so that we can understand what the person is saying.
So by this, they establish what an identity. You get it, and the identity it comes with a whole of issues like credibility and those stuff. And so that's what the lecturer is trying to explain to us. Into Lamin, continue.
Continue.
Yes, Lamin, please throw more light on the credibility for me.
I think the credibility, it's kind of like the party's ability to, let's say, fulfill their promises. Okay, so when the party comes into power and they are able to, let's say, fulfill, if not all their political policies or all their policies, but maybe as 60% or 80% of their policies, it makes the party credible. So he says that you are going to believe in that party because say that party is credible, like they're able to, let's say, they stand on their word, they're able to deliver when you give them the mantle.
Sonia,
Thank you
before
very much.
prior to the election, there was this survey by Imani Africa. They did a pragmatic analysis of both NDC and NPP, assessing their tenor, and they got to realize that NPP had 54% of their manifesto being done or being complete, whilst NDC is trailing with 43 or something.
The word is implemented.
Okay.
So by this, as a voter or as an electorate, if you are to analyze this critically and appreciate these two political parties, which of them will you think that it will help you, like going into the election? No? You understand?
Yes.
Yes, that's how it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And then also to add up with the credibility. Hello.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, with the credibility, it talks about the fact that per the policy of the political party, if it's party A, their credibility is like what they have so far done in their policy. So he did mention of that the political party's campaign. It's just like a showcase for them to tell their political actors or their audience what they've been able to achieve so far. So per their credibility, we end up voting for them. So that is what he talked about, the credibility.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are you okay now? Julius, are you okay? Yeah.
Evania. Evania.
Guys, I think you don't get what the question the lady asked. The lady was like, the campaigns. So, I mean, which topic is under party identify, blah, blah, blah. This whole thing is under which topic?
Come again.
Oh.
All right, guys. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about the credibility, right? And then we're looking at. So essentially, I think the question that the lady asked was talking about. Okay, thank you. I was talking about, what about a campaign we're discussing, or what about campaign that we're discussing? Now, we said that this topic is about campaign effect, isn't it? We're looking at the effect or the results or the consequences of political campaigns. And, we're saying that the consequences could be positive or negative, or sometimes it could even be neutral, all right? But we're looking at what do we do in campaigns that amounts to that effect, all right? So what are the things that campaign, does, or what are the things that are done in a campaign in order that a particular effect, could arise? And we're looking at it from perspective of the party, the programs, and then the policies. I mean, the candidate, all right? That during campaigns, these are the elements that we focus on in order that we achieve a certain, kind of effect. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. So, so when we take the party, apart from the identity,
Yes, sir.
the party, we also look at the party's credibility. And by party's credibility, we're looking at the principles that they hold, the values that they hold. We're looking at the commitment, to those values. Obviously, we're looking at their deliverables, whether they deliver some kind of promises that they put across. And then, of course, we're looking at credibility even from their perspective of, the kind of programs that they particularly articulate. So these are some of the, sources of credibility, or some of the credibility issues that we actually look at, from the party's perspective. Of course, the profiling as well. That is, who is a member of the party? Who are the leadership of the party? What is the party's own, mission, for example? What does the party set out to achieve? We're also looking at the party's organization and mobilization. And then, of course, the party's campaigning ability to rally people. So we are all looking at some of these things as we focus on the political party. Are you clear on that? Are you clear on that?
Yes, you are clear.
Yes, sir.
Wait, someone's hand was up. Whose hand was up? Okay. Now, if you take, for example, the policy, the programs and the policies, parties, programs, and policies also take, the identity, or they draw the identity from the party identity, all right? So obviously, you expect a center-right political party to advance a center-right kinds of policy, and that's why people would question why MPP is actually projecting or promoting free SHS, and that actually comes into play when we're actually discussing credibility issue. Does that actually mean that the MPP had left its base into the base of the Social Democrats, for example? Who can actually explain, which we have said earlier, why a center-right party would take on a perceived center-left policy? Who can explain that? Who can explain that? Rashid?
Sir, please, the
Say the question again, please.
Why would a center-right party take on a perceived center-left policy? VSHS.
Okay, so to me, what I understand by what he said was that even though there are differences in ideologies, sometimes a developing country like Ghana or underdeveloped countries do not have the capacity, as in that of the Western worlds, to undertake certain things individually. So when it comes to something like VSHS, even though the MPP practice a capitalist form of government or capitalist system of governance, individuals cannot by themselves do certain things like that. And so the government will intend to assist them, even though it is not part of their ideology or part of their system. They will try to assist them so that at least the people within the country can also have a good system of living.
Okay.
Unlike, even though it is not the ideology, but they intend to do, because the people in it are not diverse enough to at least have certain things by their own selves.
All right. Okay. Thank you. And who else want to add? Who else want to add? Yeah. Who else want to add? Okay. So that's the point we're saying. We're saying that at some point in time, contextually, because of the regime or because of the area that you're actually governing, I mean, the domain may not actually be supportive enough for a particular ideologically inclined policy, and so there could be, what do you call government intervention or state intervention policies, from a center-right party just because of the environment. But I actually differ. I actually differ that, and I have actually proposed somewhere that free SHS itself is not a pro-poor policy. I don't think that it's a socialist policy, especially being advanced by a center-right political party. And I have reasons to actually support that particular position. Can somebody actually, explain why I mean by that? What do you think is the logic behind it? Behind the kind of thing that I'm talking about? Who can try?
Hello, sir.
Rashid.
Yes. Why I think you made that point is that when you look at the current implementation being rolled out by the government, they are doing it on a whole scale approach. Yeah. And there is evidence to prove that the finance minister himself had even argued that he can pay for his children and 10 other more children. We need to do a targeted free SHS so that people who are really poor and cannot even afford buying pen or pencils for their awards will be the one to benefit from the policy instead of doing it wholesale, whereby maybe the chief executive officer of Bank of Ghana or Ghana Commercial Bank, who can even sponsor about 100 children, is also having their children benefiting from the free SHS.
Fantastic. Rashid, you have 20 Ghana cedis with me, right? Next time when you meet.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the point.
Yeah. So, say Momo will do.
But when you go to the social state, anytime a policy is being rolled out, they don't do segregation to either say that this person is worthy enough to cater for himself, or it is rolled out throughout the whole country.
Which example can you point out to?
So when you go to a country like maybe
do you know
Ukraine, when you go to a country like Ukraine is a social state, and something like rent like this is for all. It's all.
No. Do you know it for a fact, or you're speculating? Because
for a fact,
that is not supported by evidence. No, it's not. Please, can you come again? Okay, Rashid, they're asking you to actually come again. Or he will come again next time, Valerie. Yeah, but Park, I don't think that's the truth. In most welfare states, when we talk about welfare means that the society or the system or the state is able to identify people who are by definition of welfare status. And that includes, societies, I mean, of what do you call, social, character, just as you're saying. Like you take, for example, Ukraine, you take, for example, North Korea, you take those people. Remember that most of these kind of states are not necessarily social, but we're talking about communist states. Communist states are completely different from social democratic states, all right? Communism is about all of us eating from one bowl, okay? So there is no definition of rich and poor. We're all on a scale. We all maybe get our, milk from a state, milk production place, all right? So in communist states, which Cuba, for example, epitomized a typical communist state, there is no differential. There is no salary differential, okay? Now that's completely different from social democratic or democratic states, not even to use social, but democratic states that actually recognizes welfare as part of, state interventions. That's completely different. Are you with me? So in most states that actually has a welfare systems, there is an identification of who can pay and who cannot. And I think it's fundamental to our own lives even, all right? Now,
What's that?
Nana,
Yeah.
yeah, be mindful to mute if you have to have a side conversation. So if you take our family system, for example, I'm sure that those who are rich in their families take on poor people, isn't it? Take on their poor siblings, what do you call it? Children, they pay their children's school fees, etc. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, that's the case.
Yeah. So family members take on other family members' responsibilities and take care of that. And the same principle is what some of us, adduce that if the state really mean an intervention for the poorest people, then identify those who can pay. Because as we speak, it's about the state making people who are rich richer. Because if I have the ability to pay for my kids, just like the finance minister said, and my kids are actually having free education, as the woman who is in the market also having free education, invariably you are making me richer. And that's the argument. And that argument actually advances to even taxation, that tax cuts for businesses or tax cuts for businesses of a certain character actually is about the state resourcing those rich institutions to so these are some of the arguments, but of course they are subject for debate, but they are policy arguments, ideological arguments. Lydia, come in. Lydia, your hand was up.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, that's fine. So we're talking about policies taking the character of ideological parties' ideological position. So the policies actually derived from the belief set and ideological systems of the political party, the same as the values. All right, the values in policy. The free SHS, for example, is actually touted as equitable, right? Equitable policy that everybody must have part of the national cake. All right, everybody must have part of the national cake because we're all contributing, we're all paying taxes. All right, which is fair enough. But the point is that does that make some people have more of the national cake than others? Of course, the argument could be that it is not anybody's fault that somebody is poor, but others could also argue that poverty is not self-infliction. It's not self-inflicted. All right. Some people would argue that poverty in itself is state, created, because depending on where you find yourself, you could be poor, and depending on where you find yourself, you could be rich. All right. So some people could actually also define that the idea that some had access to some educational systems and some have access to other educational systems means that in you could be poor or rich based on where you find yourself schooling. So somebody will go to Achimota school and immediately they are set on a path of success, or Wesley Girls or St. Augustine's College.
Yeah, St. Augustine's.
Are you St. Augustine's?
Yes, sir.
Hey, absolutely.
Hey.
Action.
Action.
Thank you.
So
that argument can be made, okay? And somebody would say that once you find yourself with a certain school like Beposo, what do you call?
Hi.
All right. If you find yourself at Beposo Secondary School, you know where you're going, all right?
Or the boys is secondary school.
Or that was okay. That was or Dompoase, that kind of thing. So the debate that poverty is state, state, somebody could also make that argument, all right? And so we talk about values in policy, as part of the focus, all right? And that's why during campaign we interrogate parties' policy. We look at what values are enshrined in them. Okay? So somebody would say that what do you call Okada? All right, if we take
all these things on you.
Galaxy 20, who is that? using a better phone, you're using Galaxy. You have to use an iPhone. Right. All right. So if we take Okada, for example, all right, now the values embedded in Okada, maybe somebody would say that yes, Okada actually provides economic, please, the background noise is too much. Okay, yeah, it's true. So somebody would say that yes, Okada actually provides employment or provides economic livelihood to a certain group of people. But somebody would say that look at the number of people who have been maimed by Okada, all right, who have actually lost their lives, by Okada, who actually, and somebody would say that Okada is actually, kind of making our cities, not look good because they are littered all around, and safety concerns. So in terms of campaign, focus, we're looking at the embedded values in those, policies, and we are querying them, and we're actually critiquing them and bringing them to bear, and that invariably impacts on the voter. I hope you're following. That invariably affects the voter's thinking. So sometimes somebody may be thinking, oh, Okada is good. By the interrogation of the media, then they will come and think, oh, no, I don't think I can support this policy because there had been a critique and there had been a diving deep into that particular policy. And so the person changes their mind. These are some of the things that we are talking about, in campaign. All right. Any questions or contribution? Any questions or contribution?
We are good.
Okay, and of course we're talking about future prospects, etc. Now the candidate as well, and I think that somebody asked the question about candidate credibility. All right, yeah, L.
Yes, sir. I just had this thought of to ask.
Yeah, go on. Go ahead.
Concerning
You're in karaoke mode, so you have to come again. Come again. L. You have to position yourself. Okay, L, you have to position yourself and come again. Sorry, we can't hear you. All right. Any other views or questions?
Become
okay, Priscilla. Priscilla, come in.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Priscilla.
Yeah, sir, please. So are you trying to say that policies are being made in order to influence public's opinion?
Yeah, of course. That's what you do with policy, isn't it? It's to persuade people to actually look at your perspective of looking at things in order that they can actually vote for you. So the entire campaign is about that. Yeah. Yeah, Valerie.
Oh.
Valerie. Okay. All right. So we talk about a candidate, all right, and we said that yes, the candidate's identity also stems from, obviously the candidate's background. All right. We're looking at the families that a candidate is from. We're looking at the institutions that they are associated with, the kind of schools that they went, their behaviors and their attitudes, all right, obviously as a result of their utterances, all right. Now, unfortunately, we do not tend to query a lot people's utterances in order that we can identify the ideologies behind them. To understand someone is to understand, what they say. and what people actually say carries their values or their principles. And that's why what someone says is very crucial for interrogation. Unfortunately, we don't tend to actually identify people by that. We think people say things in passing or without value, but someone's identity is actually embedded in what the person said. And so we must query, people's utterances. We should not actually brush them as, just, or they just said it in just. No, it carries their belief set, it carries their values and their principles that they uphold. All right. And so when we're looking at campaign and we are trying to look at the campaign effect, we look at it from also the focus on candidate identity, candidate value set, perspectives, credibility, which we have talked about. Now, the idea of credibility is about also the consistency or the inconsistency of people's actions and their utterances, all right? Whether the person supports an idea or does not support an idea over a period of time. But also can be questioned because the credibility may also be that, or can also be defined from the perspective of someone's ability to recognize new changes or to recognize the dynamics in society, and as a result the ability to appreciate that there is a change and therefore they must change in their thinking and in their actions is also one that we can actually subject it to credibility test. So in the campaigning, we are looking at these strands of factors, and we're actually throwing a more light on them and questioning in order that people can be affected by that. All right. Any questions or contribution? Any questions or contribution? Okay. So
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You remember before Nanado won the 2016
Rashid,
election?
you sound a little bit far. Can you?
Sir, is it better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Before Nanado won the 2016 election, you remember the first attempt, there were some claims that he was arrogant, he was using motorcade even when he was only a minister. And the second year that he lost, that same thing was used. And it was used again in 2016. But you realize that in 2016, Ghanaians were almost fed up with this line of campaigning. What could have accounted for that?
Okay, what could account for Ghanaians' tiredness?
Yes, in terms of that campaign message that was trumpeted by the opponents.
Okay, all right. I mean, and that's what we talk about dynamism. All right, the society is dynamic, so over time you have to vary your attack or you have to vary your message. All right, if you have consistently said something, now you stand a chance of reaching saturation. We did saturation last week. If you have saturation in the system, which means that people will come to the level where there is no effect in what you say again because they've heard it over and over again. All right. Now, again, they may actually question the authenticity of what you have said, especially when that what you have said does not reflect the actuality. All right. So consistently, you have said that he's holding himself as president, although he's not. And in the ensuing years, that behavior has been cut short, or that actions, the person is not involved again. Certainly, you're not going to carry currency. I mean, your criticism is not going to carry currency. All right. It would lose its value in terms of believability and credibility. So you have to actually be, precise in what you are articulating to see whether what you're saying really reflect the realities of the day and whether it had actually, achieved its saturation or it actually gotten to a saturation level where people are no longer interested in that again. All right. Is that clear, Rashid?
It's clear.
Okay. Now, Valerie says that, please, where would you classify a policy that involves huge investment like free senior high school, which would investment in other sectors? And that's the point actually made, that I feel that social interventions, just like free SHS, should be looked at, and not I mean from a different perspectives. I have my reservations on that, and I have made it clear, and I think I told you guys about, because it's about priorities, but it's also about making sure that we are tackling other issues in order that we are not imbalanced. You want to achieve equilibrium. So once you're looking at education, what about healthcare? What about transportation? What about that? So you need to freeze some areas, or you need to create fiscal space, by making sure that people take more broad shoulders in order that you can actually have a focus on other sectors. But you cannot just solve one problem and then other ones are actually existing. Yeah, someone lifted their hands. Someone lifted their hand. Who did that? Okay, so we should go ahead, right? Okay. Now, when we talk about campaign, all right, there must be some institutional conditions, i.e., some things must be present in order that we say that we're in a campaign period, isn't it? And some of it involve, the knowing the date of the election. Now, for us, it looks like the date of the election is always known anyway. We are always aware that election will be organized in a 4-year term in December, and then the 7th, we know that already. So perhaps it looks like we're always in a campaign mode, originally. Now, again, there must be the definition of when the campaign is ended. Obviously, there must be the candidates known. So we say that we're in campaign mode because the candidates for the various political parties are known, both presidential and parliamentary. And so there's attention on these individuals, in the campaign. Now, certain things that are regulated or that are unregulated now are regulated in campaigns. Obviously, now that we are done with campaigns, it will look absurd for you to be seen erecting campaign billboards, isn't it? So all of people see you erecting a campaign billboard of a certain individual. People will be saying, are you correct? Because the election is over. So in election times or in campaign period, there are some unregulated things that become regulated, or vice versa. So you see that fundraising, people start raising funds. Obviously, people start embarking on advertising, etc. And that tells you that we're in campaign period. Now, after campaign, all these things are banned. You cannot just be going to radio stations or TV stations, announcing or trying to advertise a political candidate or whatever. That is actually over. So there are some institutional, activities that demonstrate that we're indeed in campaign period. Now, apart from institutional conditions, there's also what we call uncommon intensity. That when we get to campaign, you see that there is overly, intense media activities. A lot of talk radio, a lot of advertisements on political parties, a lot of phoning, a lot of documentaries, so many other, a lot of things, in terms of intensity. Then you hear a lot of debates. In fact, even in communities, all right, there's always argument about this one is good, this one is not good, so many other things. That actually goes to describe that we are in campaign period, all right? So there is that intensity, uncommon intensity. Now, again, the evidence of, intensity is actually thrown on, media attentiveness. So the media is quite attentive on almost every single thing the media is reporting. There's a campaign interest in terms of funding, in terms of meeting certain identifiable groups. There's a political discussions ongoing every time, and then knowledge about the candidate policy and party positions and the strength of vote intentions, all right? So, I mean, if we are not in campaign season or we are not heading towards elections closely, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not voting this year, or I'm not going to vote because they're angry that one or two things are not happening. But you realize that immediately we're heading towards election, a month or two people start gravitating towards the idea of voting, isn't it? Now, how many of us by January last year had decided not to vote? How many of us? Raise up your hand. How many of us had decided not to vote last year? So, McCaffrey, Betha, and Co. Yeah, as we said, I think we've said it earlier, isn't it? But, towards the, elections in December, November, then we started, thinking of voting. And that in itself would say it's the intensity that we're talking about, all right? That we listen to the debate, we listen to the conversations going on. Then our strength of intent to vote actually increases in that sense, all right? Now, Nana Kojo, is your hand up? Question. Epiphania. Hey, this your name is big for me. Epiphania. Okay. So obviously indications that we've talked about the media's activities, etc. All right. Okay. Now, also one thing that we also realize in campaigns is that the campaign, intensity is not, universal. It actually graduates, and then of course, depending on the campaign type or the geographic boundaries of the campaign, then we can actually see some level of intensity or not. So it's contextual, all right? Now, if you look at, some constituencies, for example, yeah, you cannot actually say that there's the same level of intensity, as compared to, let's say, which other constituency?
Bantama.
Bantama. Okay, so Bantama also has
Yes.
some intensity, isn't it? I mean, would you say?
But it isn't like, because it's a one-sided constituency.
Okay, so that Bantama is a very safe seat, isn't it? So a
Yes.
one-sided constituency. So yeah, the level of intensity is not the same as Odododio. Odododio is a very competitive constituency, isn't it? It's a battleground.
Yes.
All right. And so in every election, there's a huge intensity. I mean, the media attention and focus on Odododio is massive. Which other constituency would you say is a battleground and therefore there's a massive intensity there?
Medina.
Okay, great. And which other places?
Cape Coast North.
Cape Coast North is intensity, right?
Ablekuma Central.
Yes.
Ablekuma Central.
Ablekuma Central.
It's a very competitive place, right?
Yes.
Battleground. Okay.
Yes, sir.
What about?
Yes, that is where we heard the gunshots.
Lejekuku Krowo.
Oh,
no party has won the seat for consistent.
Oh wow, Lejekuku Krowo, right?
Yes, yes.
Boy. God no day.
I think that he's the poster boy of the booted.
Adenta there, you can't win more than twice.
Where? Adenta. Adenta is also one of the intense areas, right? Because of its state. Okay, and then what about the Menchia South?
It's cool.
It's
cool. It's a safety, yes. It is doing primaries.
Yeah, Menchia South is a cool running place. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
It's apart from the.
But when you say Asawase. Yes. Or Ishiaeso.
Ishiaeso is competitive, right?
Yeah, it's very competitive because it's a swing constituency.
Okay, great. So you realize that the areas that are safe seats are usually quiet, and the areas that are battlegrounds experience quiet and intensity. And then of course those safe seats too during the primaries becomes an intense place. Because everybody knows that once you win, you are gone. All right. And so the battle over during primaries is very high. So these are some of the issues that we looked at in terms of the contextual character of intensity in terms of the elections. Okay, so yeah, battleground or safe seat would actually determine that. So the campaign period, of course, is known. Now, some academics or some experts actually feel that the campaign may not necessarily have an effect, or the campaign has a minimal effect, in that sense, because they feel that by the time the election is here, by the campaign election, people have already made up their minds, and the campaign only goes ahead to reinforce their predetermined beliefs and prejudices. Do you guys agree?
Yes, that's how I see it.
Yeah. So throw more light on that for us.
Yes. As I said, maybe even before election, my mind would already be made up already. So if whether there will be campaign or not, the mind is already set. So there wouldn't be the need for me to even troop to campaign grounds, troop to rally grounds to hear of what they call it, campaign messages. Additional members. And yes, nothing much can change their minds.
Okay. All right, Hamdia. Hamdia, your hand is up.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yeah, let's hear you.
Yeah, I think I agree with him. Because people already have their belief systems, the ideologies they believe in when it comes to political parties. So if I want to vote for a particular party, sometimes campaign will not really matter. Where campaign might matter is when we are fed up with a particular political party, and I want to give the person or another party a chance. Like the 2016 election, NDC had been in power for 8 years straight at Mills, and then Mahama took over. And then MPP always wanted to be given a chance to come to power. So I think Ghanaians were fed up with the NDC. So, okay, let's give them a chance and then see how it goes too. But basically, people already know the parties they toe to. Sometimes it is even generational. It's in your family. You know that you have to toe to this line because of certain benefits that you get. So it's not a campaign that mostly solidifies it. But for voters who don't have a particular political party, who don't know whether it's NDC, the floating voters, that one there, campaign policies might influence them to vote for a political party.
Great point. Thank you, Hamdia. Yeah, Collins. Collins. Let's say you're on mute. Unmute yourself.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. And at times, campaign message influences a lot. Now, there's this.
Collins, we can't hear you.
This.
Collins, check your reception and come again. Okay.
Strategy adopted by the.
Yeah, Collins, come again. Check your position and come again. Rashid. Rashid, let's hear you.
Campaigns help political parties in persuading people to vote for them. And I would like to use this example. Getting to the latter part of the 2020 elections, the NDC got wind that the government was going to initiate free university for some of the students who benefited from the free senior high school. So they quickly issued a statement announcing that they were going to give first year students, university students, free admission. They will not pay for their admission fee. And when they get to the public domain, Ghanaians started saying that, oh, they waited to the last minute. Now that the government is announcing that they want to do this, then they quickly issued a statement to also tell Ghanaians that they were going to do that. Another point is when Mahama promised that he was going to allow the motor riders license to operate. Although the current government attacked his policy, behind the scenes, they met with the Okada riders and they even gave the Baumia some speeches to come out and tell Ghanaians that, oh, when we come, the motor riding is not safe. We are going to give you small cars to operate as taxis. So you realize that these conflicting or policies of different ideologies came in conflicting together because one way or the other party's campaign policy might have given some effect among the voting public.
Position. So what you're actually saying that even not for the voters, but among the competing parties themselves, there's an effect because one effect actually caused the other to act in a way that perhaps they might not have actually acted. That's a very,
yes, actually.
Yeah, great perspectives. Great perspective. Better, come in.
Yes, I'm back. So I went off and I'm back.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Better, come around.
So, sir, I believe campaign messages have both negative and positive impacts on individuals. For instance, with the free SHS policy, there are so many parents, for instance, in my locality, who didn't have money to enroll their wards in school. But when the policy came out, they were like, okay, so see in school fees, those kind of things. So it's like most of them are gullible, they are passive audience. They accept what they are being told and they are not able to defend or say anything. But some like a active audience, for instance, will say no. Although it's free, are we taking into consideration the academic performance of students and stuff? So I believe that campaign messages have both negative and positive effects on the citizens.
Absolutely. Great point. All right, Park, let's hear you. Park, were you the one who was making the submission and went?
It's Collins, sir.
Collins, okay.
Says Collins. Yes. Yes. And I was saying that in one way or the other, it do affect some voters sometimes, because in my constituency where I come from, a place like Choco, yes, a Choco person will tell you, I am purely an NDC person. But on the day of election, just give the person 20 or 10 Ghana cedis with a message and trust me, say that person will go and vote for you on that day. So in one way or the other, it do have effects on them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. So we're saying that certainly the campaign must have effect because of what we have observed. And it was a good perspective to actually articulate the effect of the campaigns on other opposition, opposing campaigns, even causing them to actually act in a way. And then of course, the effect of the campaign on the what do you call the audience as well. Now, even when it looks, we look at the campaign's effect on the other perhaps stakeholders, we probably could see some other effect. Of course, we have seen that the campaign is even giving an educative effect, isn't it? Somebody actually talked about the comic effect. We've seen quite a number of, jokes, and quite a number of reactions as a result of the campaign. I mean, the Okadaye, kind of thing. We've seen a lot of memes, actually coming as a result of the campaign. People now on WhatsApp, they can tweet something and you have a Nanado's photo and then saying, don't go there, that kind of thing, And all these are, the campaign effect, the kind of colloquials, the kind of social reactions in terms of communication that we actually get, some kind of slangs that we get, on the social front, are all part of the, campaign effect that we're actually talking about. Rashid, your hand is up again. Is that the old one or the new? Now, I won't go.
An old one.
Okay, I won't go. Bit actually says that personally, I don't campaign. Have I? No, maybe you have to say it again. I don't.
He doesn't think. That's what she's trying to say. That he doesn't think the campaign have impact on the people of the voter in the Ashanti region.
Okay, campaigns have impact on people of Ashanti, the voter respectively. My argument is based on the fact that they vote typically on tribal lines. So when Akufo-Addo gets to Ashanti, all needs to do is to say, fellow Ghanaians, come to like the other people. I don't go with defend your thoughts. Why are you saying that? I mean, I know you've written a lot, but I don't think that is the case. Obviously, otherwise, there wouldn't be a variation in the voter count, isn't it? Because you don't see consistent percentage of vote for the parties cycle on cycle. Obviously, there are differentials in them. Or Hamdia, come in.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really agree with what he typed in the chat.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the voter region, how to be specific, an NDC man actually got the seat. The MP, an NPP man, John Bitameu, won the elections here for the MP. So I think people's mind is about like people's perceptions about those tribal lines, because JJ is the father of NDC and then his mother is an Ever. So I think it's changing. It's about time. Like it's changed to some extent.
Okay.
People want people to do action. It's not about because you're NDC, so let's vote for you. No, because if you look at how the elections went and then how John Peter Mewu campaigned and how he was able to sponsor people, so you'd be shocked. So like that trend has changed now. It's not about I am NDC, I am an Ever, or I am MPP, I'm an Ashanti, and all those things. So like it's changing. People are beginning to reason more beyond tribal lines.
Great point. Great point. Thank you. El, come in.
I said, so one other thing that we also have to look at is the fact that religion is also playing key roles in this. Take, for instance, Dr. Baumia partnering with Nana Akufo-Addo. There's some kind of religious balance where you have a Christian as a vice president has been the trump card of the end for a very long time. And DC somehow try to copy the same practice where the late Atta Mills also nominated or appointed Mahama as his running mate. And people, Ghanaians mostly perceive Mahama to be a Muslim, which he is not. And somehow won them the vote in the year 2000. Again, I also think that city and disposition of this will also have effect on electorate, in the sense that in 2008 elections, when Akufo-Addo was contesting, he was seen to be somebody who arrogant person. He has this beard and only athlete, whilst Mahama has a lovely and interesting and a fine gentleman face, contested for the president. They were, some as some good personality who can fit within the office and all that. So,
yeah, great point. All right, thank you. Yeah, Collins.
And I disagree with the gentleman who spoke before the lady, in the sense that in a certain region, some of the particular parties have a base there, so definitely votes will come from there. But when it comes to the parliamentary, it depends on the person's performance and its personal relationship with the people of the constituent. That is how come the MPP got Amewu from the Hohoi.
Okay, good point. So there are local dynamics involved, right? Okay, Nana Joa, come in.
Yes, sir. I also want to support Amdia's suggestion, in the sense that this tribal I belong to party A, so it's like this generational thing has changed in the sense that when you look at this just last year just ended election, how most of the parliamentary they lost their seats. It's like it's not about campaign message. It's now about performance and how you have a personal relationship with the electorate. So it has changed now. It has changed.
Great point. Thank you. El says, I think someone is attacking my network. El, you're not, lucky now. Okay, great point. So we're saying that, a campaign may have an effect, but of course, must the campaign effect necessarily translate into votes? That's another question, because some people's attitudes may change, all right, but may not be immediate in order that could actually impact on the vote. So you could actually say that, yes, a campaign might have had an effect on someone, but may not have actually translated into the person changing their mind to vote for A political party or B political party. Are you with me? So the effect could actually be, manifest, or could actually manifest at a later date in terms of, their perspective on, or sometimes it could have actually changed the person's behavior, towards a particular party or towards a particular individual, but not necessarily changing their or maybe change their attitude, but not necessarily changing their vote, as a result of that. So we probably may actually experience the effect in a different form other than resulting in vote. All right. Okay. Your hand was up.
When you raised this point, it cast my mind back to some policies that the NDC had wanted to initiate. And even before the election was to start, the incumbent government started implementing some of them, and Ghanaians started saying, oh, when you say NDC for it will be.
Sorry, we lost you on that point. Say it again.
I'm saying that prior to the election, the NDC had wanted to initiate some policy. The government then realizing that, oh, okay, at the way it's possible for us to do, started initiating some of them. And then started saying, if the government has been able to do what you think you will come and do, then why don't we retain them and not let you come in? So right. I believe that, just like you are saying, it may not necessarily influence the person to vote, but it could also influence the political opponents to even initiate a policy by his or her opponents.
Right, excellent, fantastic. Yeah, Park, come in.
So with what you said, as in campaign messages translating into votes, I would say that.
Now, we didn't say.
And it's in twofold. Like taking, for instance, the Okada campaign message.
Now, we didn't say campaign message translating into vote. We are talking about the entire effect, the campaign effect.
Yes.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, okay. Yes. So yes, the campaign effect, it translates into votes, I would say.
Now,
I'll say
it does. We're not saying that it doesn't, but we're saying that it may not at some point. The effect.
Yes, at some point.
Yeah, we're saying that the effect may be educational, for example, because somebody may not necessarily have an idea about. For example, some constituencies were not known by some people, all right, but through the campaign, they get to know those constituencies. Some individuals, we didn't know them, but we got to know them. I mean, if you take, for example, Chairman Woon to me, I'm sure a lot of people didn't know who he was until the campaign that
Ashanti governor, senior man.
Until the campaign that shot to national fame, all right? So some people became national, or they achieved national fame as a result of the campaign, yeah? And so you couldn't actually say that the campaign effect would mean a translation of votes, but some of them could be educational purposes, some of them could be a persuasive purposes, some of them could be just informational or an engagement. Yeah, Adam.
So I think the campaign may also have a long-term effect, as you spoke about. For example, the pre-senior high school was trumpeted, was being propagated by the MPP since 2008.
Fantastic, yeah.
They were rejected. They were rejected. By 2012, they brought talk about it again. It was still rejected. By 2016, it had really manifest in their vote.
Fantastic.
So it, in a long way, it has a future effect on the voters.
Okay.
Secondly, when you look at the campaign policy introduced in 2020 election, NDC promise of banning, lifting the ban on savage vehicles be implemented by the current administration. Quickly, going towards the election, the MPP government was passed in parliament, was put on hold.
Yeah.
To pave way for the ban not to take effect. So in a way, it have effect on the election. Otherwise, it will have been a great loss to them if they have implement that policy. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Yes. And L says that. So I was saying that religious belief also contributes as a campaign effect on electorate. Take into consideration religious balance of the MPP presidential candidates to influence Christian group and Muslim group. That, however, bring about our own symbol. Fantastic point. Yeah. So we're saying that in either way, as we look at it, there's evidence that campaign has effect on people, but it would have the effect in different dimensions. All right. Some it could be an epistemic effect. Some it could be, a comic effect, which a lot of people took solace from the campaign. A lot of people actually watch the campaign clips just to laugh and to have a fun time. All right. Some people also have a persuasive effect that they get persuaded by.
Sir, please, your line is breaking.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Is it better now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me now. Okay. So it's better now, right? Yeah. Nana, you're coming.
Hello, sir. Then in other case, or in other words, the campaign effects can have on not only the electorates, but it can have on both political parties the effects.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it can have effect on even the political parties themselves. But even on the so you could actually even look at the intra and inter-party effect as well. All right, because if you look at the campaign, there are some intra-party effect that the campaign has, because we saw some individuals falling off, in terms of some, gaps, gaps that, you remember when Nanado went to introduce what do you call what's the name?
Neil and Evan.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Banaman, but he introduced Nilante Van der Poel. So the effect was that because Nilante Van der Poel's name had been so prominent, in the campaign, the president forgot about the Bannerman name, because the Bannerman name failed to have resonance, you get it, or immediacy. So it was actually the Namte Van der Poel one, which is very recurring and top of mind. So that in itself had an effect on the president, in terms of name recognition. Do you get it? So it may not necessarily translate into vote, but it could actually, have effect in other dimensions. For example, the president, forgetting Bannerman, but introducing, Van der Poel. Says that the resignation of the special prosecutor had a significant effect on the elections campaign, since the opposition couldn't weaponize on corruption of the incumbent government. I think that it had a serious.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that I've done an analysis in one of the policy positions, and I think that the resignation actually had a huge impact, a huge effect on the incumbent's campaign, isn't it? Okay, so let's look at some of the effects that we can identify. Hamdia, come in.
about the resignation of the special prosecutor.
Yeah.
Having a huge impact on the MPP government.
Yeah.
Say, since the MPP government didn't lose the election, would you say that it affected them?
Certainly, because
somehow.
Because even with that, they still won the election.
Yeah, but the win or lose of an election is not a function of one.
I think the effect is the reduction of the vote.
Just a minute.
Yes.
The winning or the losing of an election is not a function of one event, isn't it?
Okay.
Is a putting together of so many factors. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
And if we're looking at whether it really had an effect, we can even talk about to what extent or how many days it took the incumbent to actually address the issue. Do you get it? So
yes, sir.
That is a time that they could have spent in other things. Although it's difficult for you to look at how many votes that incident might have actually taken from the government because that measurement would be difficult to get. But you could actually look at it from the perspective of time spent in addressing the issue. And media reaction and people's reaction at the time can actually tell you that, yes, there was a huge impact on that. All right, Collins, come in.
Sir.
Sir, I was saying the effect could be the reduction of the MPP's vote.
Yes.
Because you know the previous one was almost about 1 point something, and then reducing it to 500 will also have that effect there.
That was an
to determine, yes.
But it would be difficult to determine that was an effect of the resignation, isn't it? It would be difficult to determine that.
Yeah, yes.
Because it could be a combination of a number of things. It is in the same vein that when we are discussing the effect of celebrity endorsement, all right, how much of the vote could you allocate to the celebrities' endorsement of a party? It's also in the kind of discussion that we're talking about. And so when we say, oh, do celebrities impact or have effect on campaign? Yes, of course. But to what extent does that actually influence someone to vote for a party? Of course, that is subject to debate, isn't it? Because by someone just saying, I'm John Mello, vote for President Mahama, can that alone tilt your vote? We can subject it to debate and discussions.
Yeah, it's debatable.
Yeah, celebrities actually have an effect. And Elle says, yes, it did. It cost them large amount of votes on the basis that the president started to be incorruptible, and here he was being corrupt and head of Aceh Mafia. True. So the president's incorruptibility tax actually came in under attack. And I am sure it took a lot away from the perception that he was incorruptible. You know, yeah, Hamdia, your hand is up. You want to come in?
Say about the issue of corruption. Say, I don't know. I just want to. I just need a clarification about the resignation of the special prosecutor. Yeah. So I don't know whether it is me, but I didn't see the media like pushing the agenda. I didn't really see them pushing it. Yeah, like majority of the media houses to me were quiet on the issue. So I don't know what your and then my colleagues' observation is on the issue.
Is that everybody's feeling that is that most of you, I mean most of you, do you have
but it was reported on various news media portals.
There's a difference between
yes.
There's a difference between reporting and then pushing agenda.
And I would say
maybe it wasn't the agenda setting for the media.
I would say the reason was that the reason was that even before he tendered in his resignation letter, people already knew that he was highly incompetent, and so before he even tendered him, he was highly incompetent because a person whining. I want this. I want that. I don't have this.
I think that wasn't the universal opinion.
No, that wasn't.
Say, I think
because people thought he was incompetent. I disagree with that.
No, say I think the banter from the MPP also reduced the effect because you know the MPP also came out with a lot of things he demanded, but wasn't able to do. So at the end of the day, public perceived that, look, because this man is coming from this direction, that is why he did what he did.
Okay, but I have a different opinion, and let me explain.
He wasn't so surprised to the media.
No, I have a different opinion. I think that there was a fair coverage from the media's perspective, and I think that it had some, effect in terms of people's believability of the special prosecutor than the administration, and I tell you why. Now, when the issue came up, the special prosecutor resigned. All right, look at the action that he took. He immediately set out a press press release, and to point out his positions for resignation. In that period, you realize that it was only the perspective of the special prosecutor that was in the media domain. All right, the government delayed. I think that the government delayed in response, and looking at the magnitude. Yeah, he delayed. I think the following day that they came up with their response. But that time, a lot of people have taken actually the Amidi's position, not the government position. In fact, the government position was even too long, almost about 2 or 3 years long, that most people did not even, as we speak, most people didn't even know the government position. But the position that people took was Amidi's position, because the government tarried and actually ceded the space for Amidu. So that entire, if you remember, that entire evening, I think it was the City FM that broke the story. It was completely Amidu's narrative. When the government had gone on to prepare and come back, people hardly read it. Even amongst MPP leadership, a lot of people didn't even know the government position. All right. So for me, I think that there was a fair coverage on that. I think that on that basis, Amidu won, the government lost the media. And that's my position on that one. Hamdia, your hand is still up. And Julie Fata as well, your hand is still up.
Since the beginning of this class.
I won't go with.
So this is Julie Fata.
Julie Fata, yeah, let's listen to you, yeah.
About this Martin Amidi's issue, I have kind of worked, I don't want to put it out there because I don't even know the kind of students we have. But when he had some kind of...
Let me just say something. There is what we call academic freedom, and there's what we call classroom in integrity.
I understand.
No example in class should be taken out. And whoever actually does that has a punitive, measures are waiting for you. We can expel you from class. From school, if you actually take on examples in class into the public domain. We can do that. So you are protected by that, Julie Fata, yeah?
Yes, I have, my office works directly with the Special Prosecutor's Office.
Yeah.
And then when Matamidu he wanted to take that decision long ago, but then he was kind of restricted by the late President John Rawlings.
Yeah.
Now, when he decided to break this news, what he does is normally he uses City FM. If you look at him, whatever he does it with Sanda. Then the other media houses will take it from Sanda. And as I'm talking to you, there are issues we can't bring to the public domain. We are still fighting. It has done a lot to the government, even to Nanado as a person, than any other thing. It's just because he came out at the wrong time. We're going into elections, and then the party decided that, let's just brush this off, let's respond, and then try and win our elections and come back.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is what we are doing now. But then a lot is happening. A lot has happened. The man has a lot, and it's serious that we are looking at.
So it is politically motivated.
It is not politically motivated.
My dear sister, I will see you for the remaining a lot.
Yes.
Let us not hear. So from what Julie Fata is actually saying, from the effect on credibility issue, as we talked about candidate credibility, that's a lot of things that has happened, all right? And even if you look at it from international perspective, all right, international politics, geopolitics perspective, that resignation had a lot to do with the president's image internationally, all right? And for me, if you ask me, and when I was analyzing in the media, which some people disagree, Nanado came into, into the seat
office.
into office with two key brand proposition, all right, incorruptibility and social justice.
All right.
Human rights.
Yeah, human rights. All right. The idea that he actually, represents, the people. He's an advocate for people. Now, these two, positions, I think, were battered as a result of the campaign. All right, because the incorruptibility brand proposition was battered by the resignation of.
So let me not cut you. If you observe something, when he was resigning, what he gave to the president was different from what he gave to the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you observe that?
Yeah. I think.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. You see,
what he wrote to the reasons, but it also came.
But hate the resignation letter.
Man, that's a bunch of corruption.
I will go
yeah. In your earlier submission, you said with regard to that issue, the president or the government failed and the special prosecutor winning the sympathy of the media. My argument is based on the gatekeepers theory or the gatekeeping theory, which says that they determines what should go out.
Yeah.
So on that very day, when the special prosecutor resigned, BBC covered the story that Africa's #1 anti-graft resigns after government something impediment, something like that. So it means that they determines what should go out, and after government coming up with to explain issues, the media didn't focus on what the government was trying to say, but rather as far as he has resigned, then they are pushing that agenda. That's the issue. Yes, sir.
My brother, do you know why? Because when the government was appointing Martin Hamidou, a lot of people cried foul, but they ignored them and said he was the most.
Yeah, I won't go.
Let's move on.
Yeah, okay.
Let's move on.
I won't go with. It is from political strategy, and which most of you, I hope most of you go into political strategy. From political strategy perspective, all right, it is not the media to actually throw light on the party or on an institution. It is
the opposition party.
Yeah, wait. It is how strategic you are in actually making sure that the media sings your song. All right. If I were the strategist of the political of the president or of the incumbent party, I would have ceded that night for Martin Hamidou. The day that immediately he handed in his resignation, I would have organized a press conference. All right. Because immediately you tarry, it is as though you have had the opportunity to rationalize what he put out. But if you wanted to combat the perception that he's putting out there, immediately he handed in resignation, the presidency should have ordered for a press conference and had addressed the issue immediately. Why? Because the recruitment of Hamidou was to signal the president's preparedness to deal with corruption. And that tied in with his brand image as the anti-incorruptibility. Now, the same seriousness should have been given to his resignation and had battled the perception that the president was corrupt. You see, but they lost that image, they lost that gap. Immediately they lost that window, the perception was gone. And by the time they came back with all their explanations, the country had already moved on with the Hamidou's perspective. And I thought that was a strategy gap. They didn't actually, strategize very well on that one. They lost that particular one. All right. So yes, let's move on. We say that types of effect. All right. The campaign. Jilifata, your hand is still up.
Sorry, sir. I think it's from the previous.
Okay. So we can categorize the types of effect. We say that there's a persuasion effect, all right, which we have talked a lot about. There is also a priming effect, isn't it? The media primes some, some issues, and we have said that usually issues of corruption, for example, the media primes it only during what? Elections. After elections, corruption things, we don't hear them anymore. All right. when it comes to gender issues, sometimes we only hear them during elections. After elections, they're gone. So the media primes some issues, all right? And then, of course, the growing interest, the media, as part of the campaign effect, getting people to be interested in the elections through the campaign songs, through all those things that we hear. Attention to the campaign again, mobilizing or demobilizing. We see that certain, targeted policies actually mobilizes the people of that particular policy. Okadaye, for example, you would say that sometimes some of these group of people may not necessarily be interested in elections, all right? But once the policy is targeted at them, it sort of it mobilizes or demobilizes. The same thing we can talk about, men's gold, customers. Look at the way, a certain pronouncement, whether they will be paid or they will not be paid by a certain political party, either mobilized or demobilized. And from the MPP perspective, you remember when they met and said that what do you call the men's gold customers, as well as the customers of Indum's group, said that they were going to mobilize against the MPP, for not showing interest in paying them. So the campaign effect could also be a mobilizing effect, all right? It can actually solidify a group of people or not, depending on the issues at stake, right? And then, of course, other, creating consensus. There was almost a consensus. I don't know whether it was a consensus. The choice of Professor Nana Jane, Nana Jane Ajiman, right?
Yes, sir.
There seems to have been some consensus from the women front. Was that a case, or it wasn't, universal? Yeah. Who has a perspective on that?
Most women
So it was.
Okay,
So,
yeah. L.
Okay, so it was. I remember even Osla Ekufu.
Yeah.
Was one person who fought the men who were attacking personality that women also deserve to be in a better position like her.
Yeah. I quite remember as well too. Osla also actually made profound pronouncement on that and actually criticized men who were attacking that woman. So certainly, yes, there was a consensus, on her selection and her participation, and there were quite a number of women who were drawn into the campaign as a result of her candidacy. So that was an effect, all right. Obviously, there were other effects that we can actually discuss or we can talk about. So let us wrap up. I think that, yes, we agree that there is a campaign effect. It may come in different forms. But of course, that is the beginning or is the basis for determining the campaign's objective, all right? Before the campaign starts, you must actually determine what do you seek to gain or to get out of the campaign. Is it to change some people's positions? Is it to cause them to vote? Is it to cause them to vote for you? Is it to cause them to actually have a different understanding or a different image of what it is that you are or what it is that you do? So many other, objectives, as a result of the effect of the campaign. And then, of course, it defines the way you go about it in terms of operationalizing the campaign. So the questions are that: do campaigns prime certain issues, for example? And if so, what issues do they prime? And do campaigns stimulate voter interest and ultimately voter turnout, for example? We can always discuss that, as some of the questions. All right, guys, thank you so much. I think I've enjoyed the interacting in class. I hope you have enjoyed. Any questions or contribution before we go?
Any idea
Hello,
or
sir.
assignment?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please, do you think it's safe for students of political communication, that is us, to show or to openly manifest the political party we are in?
Of course, why not? I mean, I believe in freedom of expression, freedom of association. I think one of the things that have set us back is not be able to demystify party affiliation. I think those of you, how many of you are on Twitter? Those of you on Twitter and perhaps have been following me. I had always said that political parties are social institutions. They are social organizations. They are just like joining
A church.
church or joining what do you call one of these Tiger, whatever. All these this is Rotary Club and all those things that we join. Political parties are just like that. Unfortunately for us, because of the adversarial character and nature of our system, we tend to have the freedom to identify political parties that we belong to. But why should it be a mystery? Elsewhere, people identify their parties. When you ask them, they will tell you where they belong. But unfortunately,
but in Ghana here, it is not allowed.
That's the point.
In some situation.
And you see, it is in the interest of the political party to work towards demystifying that, because people should be willing, or should have the freedom to express where they belong and should be able to be bold in terms of telling their political affiliation. Now, if we're able to do that, we can be solving some of the issues that we have.
Okay, sir. And then also, don't you think that in the future, when maybe we become media men and women, people will use it against us when we take certain position, even if we are objective, and they'll say that, oh, that's why you cry school in no MPP
and that's the misunderstanding. Just a minute.
Oh God, I'm tired.
So once we are human beings, each and everyone will belong to a political party.
So,
Chief.
So Ambia, exactly
yes, sir.
Now, you belonging to a political party does not influence your thoughts, all right? I mean, does not necessarily influence your professional, positions. You should be able to, and the most sophisticated people, the most I don't know, the most advanced minds, all right, would be able to know that these are the boundaries of your professional life as against your political ideological positions. So I think that should not, in the normal circumstances, be the problem. All right. Unfortunately, the problem is that we are not honest in our submissions to actually determine that this is my political view and this is the professional position. When those disclosures are not made, that's where we have an issue. Are you with me? But you should be able to disclose that your what do you call political view is completely different from your professional duty, and you must be able to make those disclosures. So, for example, I could actually tell that, okay, this is my inkling, this is my position. But of course, from a professional perspective, that may not be the position. All right. All right. Abubakar. Abubakar. Yusuf. Your hand is up. Okay, guys, I think that
sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, adding to what Hamdia said. Hello, sir.
We're listening to you.
I quite remember watching news and about Anamwa of GIJ was asked by a colleague to give her view on a national issue. She gave her view. People went on social media to lambast and even insult her, but a political party member went straight to even attack her verbally, which I think isn't well. So I believe with time, media men are supposed to be allowed to express or to under a particular party so that they are making a comment. People wouldn't be stereotyping them or even insulting them.
Okay, great point. Yeah, obviously, I mean, and that that is the kind of a politically mature environment that we have. All right, the idea that people actually attack, people by because they disclose, their political views, and which I mean, some of us we've had quite a lot of flack. I mean, you get a lot of insult, and most of the time you get threats. People send you all sort of threats because you disagree on certain positions and because you express, some line of thought. That is unfortunate because the society is not supposed to be like that. I mean, there must be free expression of political views, just like we have a free expression of religious views and other social views. People must be tolerant. And that's what the duty of the political party is. Of campaign season, political parties are supposed to educate political tolerance of the society, in total. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. I think it's been a fantastic interaction. I hope you have enjoyed it.
Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
we'll meet again next week. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget to
Thank you,
don't
sir.
forget to answer my questionnaire for me. Yeah.
Sure.
Please make sure that make sure that you put it across. Let people answer it for me. I'm begging, guys. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right, sir.
Make sure you.
Bye.
All right. Thank you and enjoy your weekend.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.